the opportunities that are so varied
Right.
that we have. And so I'm thinking here in terms of two ways we can look at the mission of the
Yeah.
But the Lord sends us in all routes, jobs, schools, and every other place,
Every other
marketplaces,
place, yes.
whereby we, as the church scattered, we must then still gospel. And so I think the Lord is honored in that. I'm actually just even thinking of Matthew chapter 25, verses 31 to 46, where at the end of time, the Lord just now says, those to his right, to those that are on his right, you have done this, you have visited me while I was in prison, you have done all of these things. And people are wondering, but when did we do that?
Right.
And so he gives the sense of a scattered church when he says, inasmuch as you did this to the other people, you did them to me.
For me.
And so, but when we didn't do that, so if we're going to just wait for particular church-organized opportunities, we might actually grow thin in terms of carrying out the mission.
Right. So from what I get, there are many ways through which the purpose of the church can be fulfilled beyond the traditional evangelism kind of programs or things like that.
Yes, massive tents that sometimes you just wish all of us had tents to bring people to. And indeed, people don't these days become attracted to these tents. So there needs to be different ways, including one of which is what we are doing right now, is to extend the mission of the church through the platforms that we have today, and that is very, very helpful.
Thank you for that.
Yes.
This is Reformed Studios coming live onto your screens, and we would, as always, love to hear from you, from whichever part of the world you are catching us from. So please do let us know on the various social media platforms. You can share, you can like, you can comment, or you can send through your question, and our guest, Pastor Bahudi, all the way from Botswana, would be more than glad to attend to those questions as we move along. Send them early so that we can get as many as we possibly can, and then see if we can tackle some of your questions or your comment. And tonight we are dealing with a topic, what is the main purpose of the church?
Yes.
Pastor, with the increase, where the increase of prosperity gospel being propagated everywhere in this world, every other church is talking about prosperity gospel, and quick fix solutions are often the norm, so to speak. How then can a church fulfill its true purpose of making mature and resilient followers of Christ in view of what is going on? Wherever you look, you see prosperity gospel as the main thrust of messages that you people will come across. So how can a church fulfill its purpose in raising mature and resilient Christians?
Yeah, the church does have that duty. Under Matthew 28, the same Great Commission is go out, make disciples of all nations, and then those that believe, you baptize them. And then there is the aspect of continuing teaching that must happen in the local church as a way of instructing the believers on how to carry out the mandate that it has of taking out the gospel, and to remain resilient beyond just those quick fixes that you have referred to. And so if we look also in Ephesians chapter 4, from verse 12 all the way to verse 16, you would note that there Paul shows why there is the teaching and pastoral ministry in the church. He says, particularly in verse 12, for the equipping of the saints for the work of ministry. And so the church must always be alive to the opportunity and the duty of instructing its members, adherents, on the responsibility and the how-to of taking out the gospel. Actually, I'm thinking in terms of 2 Timothy chapter 4, the first 6 verses as well. And there are words of commands, especially in verse 5.
Imperatives.
Imperatives.
Right.
And those imperatives are showing that we must indeed seize the opportunity and teach the people so that they can themselves broaden and carry the message far and wide. And therefore, resilience in the members comes, in my view, in my understanding, comes from knowing what is the task, what is the commission, and the how-to of the commission, so that we are not taken to and fro by strange winds of doctrine, but we know what it is, the gospel is, and how to propagate it with confidence, because God has assigned or given to the church gifts of pastors, teachers, who are supposed to propagate this ministry. And so it is very, very helpful when we look at it that way. There will be resilience to followers of Christ when they know what it is they need to be resilient about.
Right. Thank you for that. In many African cultures, a church can become a place where people are just looking for a solution to their problem because they are in need, so they will find a church as their safe haven, so to speak. Sometimes even with a focus on just the leader of that particular church. Okay? So how does true biblical community and fellowship as practiced by the early church look like? Or how does true biblical community and fellowship as practiced by the early church guard against this issue that I've talked about? And then you begin to fulfill the main purpose of the church.
The Bible is not silent in terms of how to do church.
Right.
And as I said, the church is a community of believers that come together primarily with two views. One is the internal ministry of those that have believed, the equipping happening in there, and then also the other view of taking the gospel out to the people. And so let me just isolate about 4 approaches that I think can be very helpful.
Right.
Corporate family worship and praise. We come on the Lord's Day or whenever we will have agreed as the church to do so, and to come and perform the central worship that the church must give to God. And worship is both corporate and individual, is where believers come together to glorify God through song, prayer, and the proclamation of the word. Actually, we are exhorted in Hebrews chapter 10 and verse 25 not to forsake that.
Right.
And so to move away from these men and women self-proclaimed, we must then have a view that church must be done corporately. And therefore, as emphasizing importance of communal worship. The second thing I would like to look at is also the need for corporate edification and discipleship. This happens in the church continuously. The church edifies itself through the music, through the various means of grace that are made available in the scriptures. And then there is this aspect of discipleship, whereby we take opportunity to help those that are coming in and continuing in this work to have handles of what is supposed to do. And so Ephesians chapter 4 again from verse 11 to 13 describes how Christ gave apostles, prophets, evangelists, pastors, and teachers to equip the saints for the work of the ministry. And we also see in Colossians chapter 3 verse 16 this process of discipleship that involves teaching, mentoring, and encouraging one another in faith. And then also we see in Romans chapter 15, verse 14, where Paul says, looking at the church, he says, but all of you are competent and able to instruct one another.
Right.
So that aspect needs to be continuing. Indeed, there is the third point of fellowship and support. As we come together as a community to fellowship, we should be characterized by mutual love, support, and accountability. We hold each other accountable. The early church exemplified this by sharing their possessions, as you might know, from Acts chapter 4, verses 32 to 35. And also, Galatians chapter 6, verse 2, instruct believers to carry one another's burdens. And in this way to fulfill the law of Christ. So the law of Christ is that we should love one another and care for one another. And therefore, the church is a place where believers can find encouragement and support in times of joy. Let me just give you this last one. The mission and evangelism that is done at corporate level of the church. The church community is also tasked with this great commission. As Jesus commanded in Matthew 28, verses 19 to 20. And therefore, the church is called to be the light of the world, to spread the gospel, and serving as ambassadors of Christ, as captured in 2 Corinthians chapter 4, that we are ambassadors of Christ. So several things we could add still if you have a bit of time. There needs to be unity and diversity in the church. The community is a diverse body. We come from the whole social structure, and so there will be the poor, the rich, and all sorts of the people, and composed of individuals from various backgrounds and gifts, yet united in Jesus Christ. And so 1 Corinthians 12 again tells us that it illustrates this unity in diversity, comparing the church to the body that has many parts, each essential and functioning together. So Ephesians 4:3 urges believers to make every effort to keep the unity of the Spirit through the bond of peace. So there are several things really that the church has opportunity to do, especially church corporate. And I'm here not talking of individuals. The church community is called to be holy. Be holy as I who has called you am holy. Set apart for God's purpose. 1 Peter 2:9 describes us as a chosen people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a people for God's own possession. And therefore, these are the means by which the church can nourish itself for the work, rather than just one-man ministry who just goes wherever he would like the church to go. And so the church gets misled, even fail on issues of holiness and discipline, because the church perhaps sometimes doesn't know the scriptures very well. And so there are opportunities that I would like to maybe to close that question with: service and stewardship. Every church member must be a serving member. Pastor Mbewe basically gives an illustration whereby he says, the church does not have to be like people on a bus where only the driver is working and everyone else can go to sleep. The church must serve in humility and love. Actually, when we look at Galatians chapter 5 from verse 13, it encourages believers to serve one another in love. The church is also a steward of God's resources, called to manage them wisely for the advancement of the kingdom. The church together, we agree who is going to be doing what roles, and we go forward. And so in summary, the church community is a multifaceted entity with a divine mandate to worship, to edify, to fellowship, to evangelize, and to serve. And therefore, it's a living organism, growing and thriving as it fulfills God's given roles in the world. It's never to be one man's show. That is completely not to be entertained in the Church of the Living God.
Right. So really looking for a church because you have a problem that the church must fix is
it's out of question.
It's out of question.
It's out of question, because you should not use the church for self-serving purposes. When you are added to the church, of course, people would think, oh, this is voluntary membership. But if you are reading it properly, it is the Lord who leads you to a particular local church wherein then you can exercise your gifting and you also